All right, so this meeting of the Infrastructure and Energy Committee on Wednesday, April 29th is being recorded and will be posted for future viewing on the Town of Barnstable website. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, anyone else desiring to make such a recording or transmission must notify the chair. And with that, you all can get started.
Thank you. I think this is the municipal version of the Miranda warning, it sounds like. But anyway. Okay, so we're started. I guess the first order of business is to approve the minutes of the last meeting. I just had one typo or change. In the old business, the second paragraph, the second line from the bottom, it said that I had that the 25% energy reduction plan, that should be 20%.
20%? Okay, I'll make that change right now.
Yeah. But otherwise, it looked good to me.
Great.
Anyone else have any comments or?
I think I looked at them soon after they came out. I thought they were good.
All right, so with this change, have a motion to adopt the minutes.
So moved.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Yeah, Peter. Okay, good. Okay, so with that, we've approved the minutes. All right. So next, old business, green communities designation. So I think after the last meeting, I'll give you the updates on this. I called David Anthony. I think it was a part of the discussion from the last meeting with regard to the issue was it within his sort of jurisdiction to deal with the stretch code or not? So I called him up and he said, no, that's really outside of my purview. He's dealing with primarily with the energy plan, but also there were 4 items that
Right.
other items that are needed for green communities designation. And I asked him, we were planning on contacting the DOER regional representative on green communities and whether that he had any problem with it. He did not. So I followed up. I called Lisa Sullivan, who's the Southeastern regional rep from DOER for green communities. I had an interesting discussion with her, which I'll summarize shortly, but I asked for some more information. She provided that. So I forwarded that email to Kelly. I don't know whether, Kelly, you've had an opportunity to forward that to the rest of the group.
Let me check. I know I forwarded the one around from earlier this morning that had all of the different initiatives on it.
Yeah, I did this about an hour ago, so it's
so I might have missed it because I haven't been working today.
Yeah, and people can look at that later, but most of it's on sort of the details of the stretch code, and you can read that at your leisure. I did not have much time really to go through the material, but I just a couple of things. I'm going to follow up with Dave Anthony. There are 3 items that we believe that the town already has, and that has to do with an ordinance that would allow solar siting in certain locations as of right, and would provide for expedited permitting and for fuel efficient vehicles. But I'll follow up, and it's not of great urgency, but we ought to know what has been done to comply with those
Right. I think
Right.
from previous, from our previous run through this a couple years ago, everything else was a go, except
Right.
for the stretch code. And I know just from listening to David, since Sean's been with him, Sean has really been focused on improving our EV situation, both in terms of a town, one or more vehicles, as well as the charging station. So I have a feeling that's going to be good news, that's going to be up to date. And I think what I understood David to say was the thing that would need to be updated was this sort of baselining our municipal building inventory in terms of energy efficiencies to give a baseline for this 20% improvement.
Right. That's
I
correct.
think that's the biggest effort to
Yeah,
update.
that's correct. But I have talked to him about just documenting the other
Yes, yeah.
last the other three, and he agrees that ought to be done. So I just thought I'd memorialize.
No, that's a great idea. But I'm encouraged that he felt like the process was manageable because there was mainly that one task to update.
Right, right. So I think when I talked to Lisa Sullivan, her understanding, and I think she said she attended the last town council meeting where this came up, that probably the biggest issue would be the stretch code.
Right.
And she suggested, once we're ready and we really understand the stretch code and the changes to it from last time around, that we try to engage Brian Florence, the building inspector, and have a discussion, and it'd be great to get his support, but at least if he was neutral to it, that would be helpful. But that's so I think and whether that's done in connection with including Mark Ells as part of that, I don't, and how that relates to the timing of Dave Anthony's efforts, I think that's to be determined.
Mm-hmm.
But at least for me, because this is an area, I don't have a deep background in building codes. I want to have a good understanding of it before we proceed further. So that's kind of my update for green communities.
And I had offered to contact Allison, but I thought I'd wait till you see what, I didn't want to schedule her if you were bringing somebody else in, so I can still do that and see if she can join us at one of the next couple meetings, if that's helpful. She was very positive. She was very much I think while she was on this committee before I was, when Gordon was a committee member and not a town councilor, I think that was sort of an ongoing action item the whole time.
Right. Right. I would, go ahead and do that. I think that would be a good idea.
And should I ask her to be a guest speaker, like at one of the next two meetings? Is that?
Yeah, I think that would be good. I think, I have Lisa is willing to do it too, but I wanted to have a better grasp of the, exactly how what's in the stretch code, how is it different from what it was 3 years ago. So I have a better understanding.
What might also be interesting is that, because I'm sure Allison, as a green architect, is probably not mostly working on affordable housing. She's mostly working on private clients, so they're probably more at the higher end. It might be interesting, and I'm willing to call them to see if the habitat design folks could comment, because they way above exceed the stretch code. They build such energy efficient houses, and one of the arguments last time was, if we follow the stretch code, these houses are going to be unaffordable. Well, yes, Habitat gets some volunteer labor, but they're not extraordinarily expensive houses. So I don't know what you think of that. I could ask them. but I know they exceed the stretch code.
Right, that's my understanding as well. I have a friend who's kind of active with Habitat for Humanity, and yeah, and that's kind of one of the key design features for what they're doing. But yeah, your friend who's the architect, that would be that'd be good if you could get her to attend one of these meetings.
Okay.
So, does anyone else, Peter? You have, and I've talked to Peter offline about this, but do you have some comments, Peter? Or?
No, I support that Habitat idea. They got a good reputation. You know, they would be a good bolt to have in the peg. That's good.
Okay, so yeah, okay. So maybe that's another potential speaker we could have here as well.
Yeah, and I don't think either one of them have to speak for the whole meeting. I mean, they could just give their synopsis and, 10 or 15 minutes, something like that, unless people have a lot of questions for them.
Well, I have a friend who's, I know he provides labor and he's kind of a skilled woodworker. But let me ask him. I'll ask him, and if there's someone in particular who really has a good overview on that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anyone else have anything on this? Okay. Well, let's go to food waste. And so a couple of things have been going on. I think Kelly, I guess as a result of the last meeting, I was going to see if we could set up a meeting with John Solomon and myself and Dan Santos and Tracy Rigazio, if I got the name right, who's the head of the transfer station. And that, Kelly is working on that. That's in process. I know, Kelly, do you have any update on that?
Yeah, so Tracy was off last week. We have a new executive assistant at DPW, so her and I identified a couple of dates on Friday that looked like would work. And then I was out of the office today, so I'm not sure if she's followed up with Tracy, but I would think by tomorrow we'll have that scheduled.
Okay, all right. And then the thought was, since we're asking for the meeting, we would prepare an agenda. And John and I collaborated on that, and we circulated a draft, hopefully earlier today. Was that right?
I think it was this morning, yeah, or yesterday. I think you sent it.
Yeah.
No, you sent it to the group this morning.
Okay, all right. So
I think I'm confused because I'm not sure what I was getting.
So
there was one that was sent around to the group this morning.
Okay, all right, good, thanks. So everyone has that. Do you want, what I could do is to walk through the document, or is it pretty I mean,
yeah, please do that. I've been in meetings and things all day. I haven't had a chance to look at it. So if you don't mind running through it.
Okay. All right, John, you wanna do that, or do you...
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
I might be able to find it on my computer.
Yeah. Maybe can you share screen? Can you show it on the screen? Can you do that, or?
I might be. Let me see if I can.
I can do that. I have it. Sorry, I'm home, so my child is screaming.
That's okay. Thank you.
We were off for his birthday today. He turns 3 tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
But I can hold it. Give me 1 second.
Thank you.
I'll tell you what I have in front of me, so I'll start, and then when it's on the screen, John, you can follow up. How's that?
Sounds good.
Yeah. So the we wanted to talk to him really about two things: improving food waste collection at the transfer station, and then other opportunities for the town to reduce food waste. We thought a good way to starting that is, does the town have a goal for reducing food waste at the transfer station? And if so, what is it? We note that when you look at the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection's plan, solid waste plan for 2030, it has almost a 50% reduction of food waste going into the waste stream. So, that's part of the larger goal, which I think is for a 30% reduction. But it thought it would be good to raise that. And if they don't have a goal, what should it be? So wanted to relate the state plan to at least their thinking about it at the municipal level. And now that it's in front of me, why don't you, John, why don't you take it up from here?
Sure. And any questions or comments on item number 1 there?
I think that's very important, and that's the right place to start. I'm also, I have an ongoing struggle trying to figure out what impact do these studies that the Cape Cod Commission pay for, what impact do they have on the municipalities on the Cape? And sometimes it seems like they just do them and they get filed. But, their report a year and a half ago was very clear from 2 outside consultants that anything that can be composted on the Cape should be composted for multiple reasons. One is cost savings. So maybe you cover that later on, but I think that in terms of a goal, it's not just because the state thinks it's a good idea, it's because we've done a study on the Cape that says that we should be composting everything that can be composted and not paying to have it shipped off Cape. So I think somewhere that should be in here, and I may not have caught it if you have it towards the end.
I don't think we did, and I think that's a great idea, Jane. I think we should definitely add that.
So maybe
Great-
just
great
follow
point.
up on that, Jane. If you could send an email around just referencing the study, particularly if you have a link to that.
Yep, I definitely
And then
do.
and then we'll include that in the agenda.
And some of our previous minutes, probably 2 years back, I don't know, Peter, if you remember, but we tried to get a handle on what was the actual cost per year to the town of Barnstable for including the food waste in the solid waste that we shipped off Cape. And, the ballpark number is 30% of whatever we pay for shipping solid waste off Cape. And I kind of remember the number of around $100,000 a year. That's a pretty big number if that's true.
Well,
And it's going up every year.
I think the relevant comparison is what does it cost to deal with food waste compared to what is the cost of just bringing it off Cape. I mean, there are also
Correct. Yeah.
there are a number of other environmental reasons as well, but
right.
But yeah, reference to that study would be great, and we'll incorporate the concept into the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can address the if we'd like to go into the cost issue is actually a little bit complicated. The town and of course this is really we're talking the only the town's expense is mostly the transfer station. At the transfer station, we're paying a little over $100 per ton as a tipping fee. The cost of having the compactors emptied, taken away and emptied. Right currently, the food waste that's being collected in the shed at the transfer station, the cost of composting that is being paid for out of recycling grant funds. So it's not costing the town anything because we have grant money to pay for it. If we were to get to a goal of 50% of all the of everything that goes through the transfer station, we wouldn't have enough grant money to cover that, and so it would cost. So the town would have to pay even though it seems that the compost is so valuable, you still do have to pay to have somebody take it. What we're hoping and expecting is that as the volume grows, the cost will go down. Right now, where we're only having, I guess it's probably about a ton a week is what we're, last I heard from Tracy, we're getting about, I think about a half ton or a ton a week. And so at that low amount, it's more, it's actually cost, the actual cost is actually higher than the 100 pounds per ton. But of course, although again, that's not coming out of the town budget. That's being paid for with grant money. You know, if we had, you know, thousands of tons, then the cost is going to go down. So the economics are complicated, but and I think the Cape Commission study really made this point very well. If you think long term, this is the better solution, the better approach, not only environmentally but economically as well.
Right, and I agree with you, John, that right now it's very complicated, and we've got just this little piece that we have the option to impact at what comes to the transfer station. But if we're thinking, you know, how is the town going to support, for example, having all the schools compost all their food waste the way Falmouth is, we might need to see if they will share their cost working with Black Earth, and if all the restaurants want to band together and start having their food waste composted on Cape, you know, they're probably all going through private collectors right now. So we've got this very fractionated system, which is probably not cost effective for almost anybody. So I don't know who takes charge of a, you know, a systemic overview, but I think starting with schools maybe as they've done in Falmouth is not a bad idea. And that may not be up to, I mean, that may be just a recommendation from this committee and not a task of this committee.
I think it would be helpful because we're getting into those issues sort of on point 3. Let's
Okay.
let
Okay.
John go through the, you know, ways we can improve food waste collection at the
Sorry.
and then we can come back to the broader issues later. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go through the rest of number 2 very quickly because I think we've talked about all these things before. But these are things we could, you know, sort of implement in the short term at the transfer station, and you know, improving the signage. The permit renewal is an opportunity to communicate with the users, and I think we should take advantage of that. We want to take a look at the transfer station page on the town website and see what we can do to emphasize food waste collection there. We also have, the town has a newsletter, social media. You know, the town has a pretty big media presence, and we'd like to leverage that. And you know, we certainly want to look for any state grants that we can and talk to other towns. Does anyone want to talk more about any of those things? I'm just trying to kind of move things along. Because I think we've gone over a lot of this previously.
That sounds good.
Yeah, you know, I think this is the one thing that I found very confusing when I moved here, you know, full-time basis, and maybe we can include this. We talk. I've been composting my own stuff for years, and and I heard that the town was composting. What I didn't understand was the distinction between the vegetable scraps that I've been composting on my own and what you can bring to the town transfer station, which is basically meat scraps that you know you wouldn't want to put in your backyard. At least I wouldn't want to. So it really probably is most effective and economical to have people composting their own vegetable scraps and bringing the meat scraps to the town transfer station. But at least and sort of communicating this to people in the town at large, making the distinction between really what you can basically recycle through the town transfer station versus what you can do yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and one that we need to emphasize emphasize more. Certainly, to the extent that people are doing composting themselves in their backyard, that's terrific. Certainly, economically, that's terrific, and we want to encourage. We want people to continue that. We want to encourage it. The collection is for, as you say, meat and other things that you wouldn't want to do in your backyard, and it's also for people who don't either have the space or the inclination to do it at home.
Yeah, exactly.
It's some people, a lot of people think it's kind of fun and they really like the compost that they get out of it. Other people would rather not have a pile of garbage in their backyard. And the more effort you put in, the cleaner you can make it. People do it all different ways, but we certainly do want to continue to encourage that. Do you want me to go ahead and address item number 3?
Sure, go ahead.
And here, one thing that I don't know to what extent we need to do this in the outline, but certainly in meeting with Dan and Tracy, we want to make clear that we understand that much of this in item number 3 is outside the responsibility of DPW, but we're still interested in Dan's and also Tracy's thoughts on these issues, because as town employees, a lot of knowledge of how things work in town, we think they may have some helpful insights into how we could accomplish some of these goals. And we're really hoping at this meeting to take a big picture look at the whole issue. But we are going to make sure that we're clear to Director Santos that we understand that much of item number 3 is not directly within his purview. So the other things in town is the big issue is the private haulers. I think probably more than half of people in town don't use the transfer station. They have private companies picking up their trash curbside, and that's a challenge to how do we get those private haulers to agree to take food waste. Ultimately, probably in the short term, the solution is probably to have a separate company such as Black Earth provide that service separately. But it would be great if we could get the folks who are currently hauling trash in town to separate food as well. And then certainly schools, anything we could do to some extent, I think in at least some of these schools, it may be in all of them, some of these efforts are underway. I think certainly as I understand it, at the high school. But that's I think a very important piece of any effort that we do. And then the next issue is the commercial and institutional, and that's where that's where there's really a huge opportunity. And also we have a state regulation requiring this, and so that's, if we can find a way to get local businesses and institutions to come into compliance with the state regulation, we can have a big impact there. And then the last thing is just try to come up with an overall town-wide plan to address this in a global way. And then I'm just looking at this, Barry. We may have maybe I missed it but one thing we don't have on here is the idea of setting up a composting facility either on Cape or nearer to the Cape, so that to cut down on the transportation cost. That is something that the county had been looking at one point.
Yeah, the county is looking at it, I think. And I think when we talked to Black Earth, like a couple years back, they listed that as one of their key constraints in terms of being able to fully service the Cape. And I don't know if they've improved that, if they've found an opportunity, since they're now more active in Falmouth and I think also Yarmouth. I think they also pick up at the Yarmouth transfer station, but they pick up from different locations in Falmouth. So that's a very important point, I think. And I didn't follow through with a person I met at the high school, but we hosted the environmental students. There's an environmental vocational track at Barnstable High School. And we invited, we actually talked to them about the herring, and then they came here last Friday, one class. There's a class in every year group, but I think it was the juniors maybe that came to our herring run to see the herring, and be happy to follow that up with that question with their teacher, who's really very global environmental in his outlook. So see what the current status is what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Okay. I just, going back to the composting on the Cape, given the concern about the groundwater, is that an obstacle?
No.
I think it's something we have to be aware of.
Right.
But I don't know the answer to that. I don't, we'd
I
have
think
to.
if you compost properly, you're not, especially if it's food waste, it's not
Right.
yard waste that might have herbicides and excess nutrients put on it for the fertilizer, but it's food waste. So a lot of the companies like Black Earth, they preferentially pick up food waste only. And I think if that's composted properly, nothing toxic leaches into the groundwater.
Yeah, it's Jana, it's not so much toxic material, it's nitrogen. We have such an issue with nitrogen getting into our bays and estuaries that if we, any composting facility would have to have some way that we're making sure that nitrogen isn't leaching into the groundwater.
Well, probably can
it might depend a lot on where it's located.
Yeah, you
but
can
that's
probably ask Black Earth, because they probably have that, answer for us, because pretty much anywhere they compost, there's going to be some impact or some adjacency to water.
Yeah. And I think really the action item here would be to reach out to the county, the Cape Cod Extension, and see what they've been doing with this, and make sure they understand that we that we think this is something we really want to partner with them on.
That's a good idea.
And it may be not just a sort of a yes or no, but a function of what protections you would put in and what the cost implications are.
I'm sorry, Cape Cod Commission is what I meant to say.
Oh, okay.
Right.
That's the Cape Cod Commission. They're the folks who did the waste study, and and I think in that study they recommended that we look into this, and I think they have made some efforts along those lines since then.
Well, I think but saying that the extension is a good idea too, because they have recommendations for anything involving, agriculture or landscaping, so they probably have a State Department of Agriculture recommendation.
Yeah,
I would imagine there'd be somebody knowledgeable there too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see what does either Jane or John want to follow up with the Cape Cod Commission?
I can follow up. I'm talking to them about herring too.
Oh, that'd be terrific, Jane. Thank you.
And ponds, so I can follow up with them.
Yeah, it would be good if you would do that before John and I were going to meet with Dan and Tracy.
Sure, I'll try to do that soon.
Okay. Yeah, so they, and I guess the issues that are raised in sort of the third item here is when you're talking about the transfer station, that's really a pretty small part of the picture, the overall picture.
Yeah.
But Rob, I think Rob has just joined us. Let the minutes reflect that. So Rob, we've talked about we've gone really through most of the agenda, or at least we're now talking about food waste. So any other comments? And we circulated a draft agenda that John and I put together for meeting with Dan and Tracy at the DPW. Tracy runs the transfer station. Okay, hey, Rob, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm following.
Okay, all right, okay. I guess another thing, and just what I've researched talking about the schools, that apparently the Barnstable United Elementary School has received a grant from the state under the Greenworks program, and they have a contact person, and it just happens to be I know someone who teaches there, who's a son of a friend of mine, so I may just follow up and see what that's all about.
Could you repeat the grant? I had some background noise here. That how did they get their grant, or what was
It's part of the Greenworks program.
Oh, so is that the state related program?
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay, great.
And so there may be other things within the schools, but that's something that I'm aware of.
Is that for the whole school district, or did you say that was for
No,
the high
just for the school. So this is for
school?
fourth.
I see, schools.
Yeah,
Great.
fourth and fifth graders.
Oh, okay. They're sometimes the best place to start. They talked about the elementary school starting in Falmouth in the articles over the winter about the food waste recycling, and they get to be very enthusiastic.
And we're talking about Falmouth. It turns out that I have an old colleague of mine is actually on the Falmouth Energy Committee.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and so I've tried to I've emailed him earlier today and see what they're doing and how it relates to what we're doing.
Great.
So all right, anything else on food waste? All right, so let's move on to new business. So so I think the whoops. Okay.
Uh-oh, does that
Anyways,
mean AI is taking over our minutes?
No, I don't know what, I must have hit something, but it is not.
okay.
We could do a pilot test.
Well, anyway, so I think we talked about last meeting about the Commission for Energy Infrastructure Siting and Permitting.
Right.
So just a couple of things. I think and Kelly circulated comments that were that I guess a town member. These were comments that were provided by I'm sorry, but some either town official or in central or western Massachusetts, and basically it gave more of the municipal perspective on the proposals that came out of this commission. The the town manager, Mark Ellis, apparently has followed up with the governor's administration on one of the comments that they made to the commission, and that was the effect that where the state is taking over permitting responsibility, if there's a liability that's created that's not picked up by the developer, that the state should assume responsibility rather than the town bearing that. So apparently that's, there's been some discussion there. This was mentioned at the prior town meeting. And of interest, there's a restructuring roundtable session on June 14th, in which this is going to be discussed, and included in the speakers is the key state official on this commission and the head of the Massachusetts Municipal Association, who would be articulating, I guess, the probably what you could refer to as the consensus municipal position. So that may be of interest, and I think that was included in what was circulated by Kelly, I believe, earlier today. So that's,
yeah, that seems like a key point, that liability issue. I think that's a great point, and I think you brought that to Mark's attention, right?
well, I think this had come up at the town council meeting, but that's I drafted a section.
I think that's important, because I think that, there's fear and concern in a pretty vocal sector of the population, and to reassure them, at least on that aspect of the economic risk, is pretty important.
Yeah, I think this is something that if people who are either for or against the wind project will probably agree on.
Yes. Yep.
So anyways, that's the only update I have on that. And anyone else have any other comment? So the last item we have is the status of new member appointments, and we had two new members that were proposed by the appointments committee, and it went through the first town council reading at the last meeting. And Kristen, I guess, is it coming up again at the next meeting, or?
I do believe it is on the next meeting, yes.
Okay, so the likelihood is by the end of next Thursday. Is that the next meeting? Or is it this Thursday? Okay.
2 days. Yeah.
Okay, by the end of the week, we'll likely have two new members. So
Good.
good. I think we could use some reinforcements. Okay, so before we go on to the agenda for the next one, does anyone have anything else they'd like to bring up? If not, okay. For the next meeting, I think it'll be the follow up on food waste and green communities designation. Those are the two areas that we seem to be focusing on. Now, I think I will, assuming for our next meeting, we have two new members, and I may, have a brief discussion with them before the meeting, but I'd be interested to see whether they would like to raise things that they would like to see this committee do that other than what we're already doing.
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting to have them introduce themselves too, and
Sure.
for us, for us to go around and talk about what we've been focusing on. I have a question, Kristen, I haven't really kept up with all the town council minutes, and I know there have been some new subcommittees made. Is that correct on the town council?
Yeah, the ad hoc committees have been legalized, I guess, and we're just waiting to find the residents to be placed and voted on for the two committees that have residents on them.
And do any of them overlap with some of the things we're working on? I guess that was my question. Any of the ad hoc committees? Are they housing? What is it?
My
Is housing-
experience is everything overlaps in town government, so I mean,
Right.
that's kind of,
Yeah,
I mean, there's not specifically one, I think there was some talk about having an ad hoc committee related to wind and solar, and that didn't get on the radar. So there's not anything specific to infrastructure and energy, except for that, zoning is, needs, if we're gonna be developing over here or there, there's zoning impacts. I mean, I feel like there's just a lot of overlap. Zoning, housing, there's one on town council rules. That wouldn't be anything applicable here.
Right.
There's one on, I'm calling it the committee on committees, where we're looking at, do we need to restructure our committees or change them? We need to kind of get the verbiage kind of cleaned up, because there's some things in one place and not in another. So,
I wonder if there is one on housing, if stretch code might be of interest, and the whole green communities thing might be of interest, if there's any overlap.
I think the housing committee is more about kind of getting a handle on how can we bring more affordable housing forward, and where are there places where housing is appropriate based on resources, infrastructure, and that kind of thing. And don't forget, it's a very small window of time that they're working. And I mean, I don't know that it would necessarily
Okay.
something at the front burner, because I just think they have so much.
It's almost more like the zoning question. Is that where to put it?
It's just, there's, they've got to wrap their heads around what it is they want to kind of hone in on. And I think zoning a little bit is about, does form-based code needs minor tweaks to it? Do we need to think about how the overlays are hitting each other? So, again, I'm not on those committees yet. We haven't been placed there. So,
I see.
and they have a very specific narrow target of what they're
Okay.
looking at in a very specific time. So it's not an on and on kind of thing.
Okay, well, that's good to know. That helps. I just think that in my mind, if you're thinking affordable housing, and if our affordable housing builder on the Cape, i.e. Habitat, is making the very greenest houses of all, that there should be some understanding that, you don't let a big development go in behind BJ's and not have solar on the roof and EV chargers, for every unit, and you don't have gas appliances. I mean, there's a little bit of an overlap, but
no, I
maybe
know
not
there is. I just don't know that
maybe that's not what the committees are going to focus
I
on.
don't think the point about housing is to dictate how the intricate details, more just the concept of, like, if we have this amount of land and we have resources here, here, and here, where is it applicable that we think about placing new housing development with all of the constraints that we already have in place through zoning, but also, infrastructure, water resources, quality, quantity, and those things. So it's kind of like the overview, as opposed to the things you're talking about are like specifics. If we had a laundry list of things, if we could say, if all the building in the town included these 10 things, it would be a great idea. And I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just don't think the committee will be talking.
Not on their roster right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean,
Right.
maybe that's an ad hoc committee that comes out of that, or that's a suggestion for something to think about. And I mean,
Well, it
Okay.
sort of concerns me that we have some of these overarching principles that we've embraced supposedly as it declared that are important, or that we're following this philosophy as a town. One is that there's a climate emergency, and another one is that we're part of his complete streets. And that they both have to do with potentially where you'll be siting you know, multifamily housing. So it doesn't have to dictate the discussion, but it has to be sort of accepted as an underlying principle.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's something to maybe touch base with Felicia about. I mean,
Okay.
maybe there's another committee that comes out of that looks more specifically at those things, and how could we, bring those more into, once we do some work on zoning and housing at a larger scale, how could we, kind of bring that forward? So
Mhm.
it's,
Okay.
it's a point well taken.
Okay, and just, Kristen, if I could ask, what is form-based zoning or form-based code?
I am not an expert in form-based zoning, but it's a by right process where people can come and develop properties by right based on certain forms in certain places.
Okay,
Mainly, it's not in every village, it's specific to a certain zoned area, so.
okay.
And that's the one, the big controversy is the 307 Main Street project where they want to build 4 stories. So.
Yeah.
Okay, is that, do they have a right to do that under the form-based?
Under form-based zoning, yeah.
Okay, that's what,
Yeah.
okay.
I think most of the hubbub over it is to do with Main Street Hyannis, and
Yeah,
the approval just sort of towards the end of the last makeup of town council before you all took office was I thought was approving zoning so that there would be a certain setback and a certain elevation. And I didn't remember it was 4 stories. I thought it was 3 stories, but it's 4 stories. Is that?
I believe it's 4 stories.
But they're supposed to all have a certain setback, and
It's supposed to fit in a certain form so that a developer can come and
yes,
say,
yes,
these are the
that's it.
100 things that need to be done. I'm making that up. It's not 100, but here's the list of things you need to do in order to fast track your building so that,
Right.
if you meet those criteria, you can kind of go past certain, variances and things that were in place before that, so it's about height, how does it look, what are the setbacks, and, some kind of the elements of design, parking, those kinds of things, so.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. All right. Does anyone have anything else? I think we're coming to the end of our meeting here. And it looks like we may actually do it within an hour.
Perfect, within an hour.
Okay. So when is the next meeting that we've scheduled?
Let me take a look at the calendar.
I
I have
think it's
on next
May
Monday,
7th.
next Tuesday, and
May 7th is next Tuesday. Okay. All right. That seems to
when
be
is
our
it?
next meeting.
When is
Pardon?
the next meeting, Monday or Tuesday?
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday. I
And-
think when we worked out the schedule from now through May, there were some days that we couldn't do on Mondays. So that one is
Yeah,
next,
so-
that is a Tuesday.
Right. So the meetings in May, and I apologize, but yeah, they were out of our normal schedule because of other plans that I had made and
Okay, so
commitment.
the next meeting is Tuesday, the 7th? Oh, I
Yes.
see it, it's on my calendar.
Okay. All right.
I also have the 13th. Is that true or not?
No, I don't think we're meeting the 13th. So yeah, so
Let me check. I mean, if it's in the calendar, then it's because I put it in there. I don't have one on the 13th. I don't have a meeting invite that I sent to anyone on the 13th. The next one I have would be, let's see, so we've got
Tuesday, May 28th.
7th. And then yes,
I have-
the 28th.
Yeah, and just my explanation, I'm going to be in Europe for a couple of weeks in the middle of May. So around for that, accommodate me.
Joy, sounds lovely.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
That sound lovely. So they're both at 5 o'clock though, our regular time.
Right.
Okay.
So I got a little bit of infrastructure. The MassDOT is having a in-person briefing slash presentation slash listening session at Veterans Building on the 13th at between 12 and 3 and 5 and 8.
Okay,
Anybody wants to go down, find out what's going on the bridges. Briefly,
But-
Bourne Bridge
thank
is, Sagamore Bridge is coming in, maybe done by 2036.
What? Really?
I thought I had
They're
heard
not starting to
2032.
2026. They're not starting to 2026.
Okay.
And they're only gonna do the Sagamore first, and the Bourne is supposed to be a year later, pending funding.
Wow. Okay.
Well, don't hold your breath.
Just a
So
little infrastructure.
do I have a motion to adjourn? Well, thanks for that, Rob.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Um,
move.
Rob second, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, well, with that, the meeting's adjourned, so we'll see everyone next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Week from
Thanks,
Tuesday.
everybody.
You got
Kelly,
it.
thank you for coming in on your, taking time on your day off.
Yeah,
Oh, no
thanks,
problem.
Kelly.
No problem. Have a great night, everyone.
Right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.